When we were young, we read more often because we had to. It was the only way for us to get knowledge and to be enlightened. Read to your heart's delight and be enlightened. Let's just read. It's a podcast by Andy's Personal Development. Stay tuned for more reading and enlightenment. So, welcome, and we are currently live in the studios of Let's Just Read. We have a special guest on this program, and I'm about to introduce him. He is quite a fascinating individual and extremely talented. Nationally acclaimed game show host, creativity coach, and author GeneSJones has entertained and inspired audiences for more than 4 decades. His innovative career includes many years spent as a professional fire eater and juggler, magician, and television sportscaster. Jones also served as an associate editor of the Guinness World of Book of World Records, which led him to create the GIMME A HINT trivia game show since 1986. He's hosted that uniquely formatted game show over 2,500 times nationwide, while also teaching creativity seminars and ghostwriting custom speeches for corporate and private clients. His latest book, Consolidated Wisdom, is a fascinating collection of over more than 1,500 of history's most profound and inspiring quotes from the past 5,000 years. Wow, this is indeed an extremely fascinating and talented guest. So, without further ado, let's welcome into the studios Gene S. Jones. Welcome.
Thank you, and thanks for the great introduction.
You inspired that, my friend. Thank you. You deserve it. So, for the purpose of references, this episode is entitled Inspirational and Thought Provoking Author Gene S. Jones. Gene, I'm really fascinated by what I just read. Of course, I had looked at it before and I'm thinking, how did you find so much time to do so many things and accomplish so much? What is that like for you as an individual, Gene? Tell us.
It's interesting because when you list it all in one little paragraph, it sounds overwhelming. But as it unfolded, it was always just the right thing to do at the time. And I
Uh huh.
think just being in tune with yourself and what you think you should do at what period in your life. For instance, touring as a one man variety show, I realized in my early 20s that was the age to do that in. And then after a while, really had the urge to settle down and start a career in one place.
Yeah, sounds really fascinating. Thank you for sharing, Gene. But in all the stuff that you have done, I want you to tell us which one do you think you really, it gives you that sense of fulfillment, that sense of meaning, that sense of purpose? Or is there some of that in all of them? What's
Well,
your take on
definitely some of that in all of them, or I would not have done them. I'm someone who is pretty much guided by my heart. I never did things for the money. I always did them because they felt good. But to be honest, this new book, Consolidated Wisdom, is probably the most, the closest to my soul of anything I've
that?
ever done. And it's kind
Yeah.
of a cumulative thing that came out of the game show because I used to use wisdom quotes in the game show. And that collection of quotes that I collected over the 35 years of doing the game show was actually the basis for the book. And then I expanded upon that.
Yeah, sounds really good. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. So we're gonna get to the book in a little bit, but
Sure.
The author part of Eugene, when did you discover the passion for writing?
That's a good question. Because as a kid, going to elementary school and high school, I always thought writing was kind of a chore. And my
Ah,
teachers would always have rules like make sure your sentences are brief or your paragraphs are like this, or, make sure to include that. And so the rules kind of restricted me in a way I wasn't even aware of. But then I got to college and I took this course called creative writing.
mm-hmm.
And the teacher gave an assignment, write a story on this theme, whatever it was. And and I raised my hand. I said, "Well, what are the rules?" And she said, "No rules, just write." And that paralyzed me at first. I was terrified. How do I write without the rules? But as time went on, I started to just write. And then I kept writing. And all of a sudden, I was creating things that I didn't even know were inside of me. And that was the beginning of my creative writing. It was in college.
Wow. Thank you for sharing, Gene. How did you come up with the term consolidated wisdom? What inspired that?
Well, basically, it's because at the end of each chapter, I consolidate the chapter. So I
Ah,
try to sum up certain thoughts that are in it. I don't try to just regurgitate the quotes again, but something that the quotes inspired, a discussion of some kind or some particular point of inspiration or understanding that I wanted to really drive home based on the quotes in the chapters. So basically, and then at the end of the book, I consolidate the whole book in a similar fashion. So the chapters and the actual final chapter all added up to a consolidation. So the name of the book kind of came organically from that.
yeah. Wonderful. I'm fascinated by something that I've seen here. And it says that in the final two chapters, the book introduces a wisdom meditation method that provides readers an opportunity to apply the book's vast wisdom to their daily lives. What kind of wisdom are we specifically speaking about, Gene? Share with us.
Well, basically, what you're talking about is the wisdom meditation chapter, which is based on the idea that you can take some of that wisdom and put it into a method and thereby extract additional wisdom. So,
Uh-huh.
using whatever quotes the person wants, it's not a particular quote. Each individual can choose the person and the quotes that they want to use. And then there's a whole protocol of how to use that and to create your own internal mental board of directors that you consult. You're really consulting yourself, but you're
Yeah.
speaking for what you think those people would give you as advice. And that uses a lot of psychodrama, which is something I've been trained in over the years. So it's the application of psychodramatic techniques to the wisdom process. And it's not as complicated as it sounds. I know those are big words where people might say, "Oh, I could never do that." But the truth is, anybody can do that. And anybody that I've led through the process goes, "Oh, that was much easier than I thought. I guess that's really pretty simple." So if people do get the book and read that chapter, it will take them step by step into this particular way of applying wisdom to their own challenges.
Yeah. I tend to listen very carefully, and one thing that really stands out for me is someone having an internal board of directors. I love that term, Gene, and it gives me a fair understanding of the overall message that you want folks to get. I just want to share with you something that I have here, and you're going to be very familiar with. But the question that I really want to ask, and I hope that I'm bringing up the right one, here it is. What inspired you to get this particular cover? It looks like a combination of something twilight and cosmic. Am I right?
Well, it is cosmic. I'll explain the process. And it goes to, and there's a whole chapter on creativity in the book, and teaching creativity and living a creative life is really what my whole life has been about. So the process is I actually hired an artist to do another
Ah,
project earlier in the year. And this was last year. And he did this fantastic job for that project. So I decided this is the guy I want to do my cover. So that was step one. And then I contacted him and I told him what the book was about. I sent him the manuscript, let him look it over. And then we started kicking around ideas. And then he started sending me, well, do you like this? Do you like that? What if I put this here? Or do you like the colors? And that was another big thing was what kind of color palette do you want? So little by little, we just put it together. And then he sent me different samples. And I would say, well, could you try changing this a little bit? And then one day he sent me this. And I went, wow, I love that. So
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
like I had the idea in my head at the
Hmm.
very beginning, but the
Yeah,
idea evolved. And the truth is, that's the creative process. Things evolve, and you have to be open to new input and change and flexibility and all those things. And if you are, and you take the time and apply focus to it, you usually get good results.
yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Gene. I appreciate it. So here's the thing. What kind of feedback, what kind of response have you been getting with Consolidated Wisdom? And I ask that because usually folks get involved in book talks where you sit down with a live audience and you can actually get a feel of what people are getting based on how you tell them about the content and the message you want them to get out of the content. Have you had that experience before? And if so, what was the feedback you have gotten so far, Gene?
Well, I haven't done any live. The book's only been out 5 weeks,
Five
so this
weeks,
is all pretty fresh,
right?
and just kind of sorting through what kind of appearances I want to do. I don't. So everything right now has been on the internet and doing Zoom and different forms of electronic broadcast. But
Yeah,
the interesting thing is, some people that have bought the book and read the book have contacted me, telling me how inspired they've become by the quotes in the book. And this is the greatest thing that could ever happen. So it's been very rewarding. I'll give you three examples I'm talking about.
yeah,
One
sure.
was I've had a mentor since 1980, just a
Hmm.
brilliant man who's very well known in his field. I won't name him just for his own privacy, but
Right.
he's very famous in the psychology, psychodrama. He was my trainer in psychodrama, actually. And he bought the book, and usually he's not very effusive about anything, but he contacted me to let me know how this book to him was the go-to book on quotations for all books, and that he was really inspired, and that it was so useful to him already that he already bought a copy for his daughter, who's a
Hmm.
very high corporate person, because he thinks it would help her in her corporate dealings. And then
Right.
another person contacted me saying how they've already bought copies of the book for their children who are going to college so they can have it for their term papers. So these are things, and I've had a few calls of that nature. Another person that I know professionally is using the book to use quotes in a project that he's doing. So those initial feedbacks have been really good. And the reviews I've gotten from Publishers Weekly and a few other major sources have also been very positive.
Yeah, wonderful, great. So I'm thinking it's a collection of more than 1,500 of history's most profound and inspiring quotes from the past 5,000 years.
Long
Now,
time.
now, to a lot of people, Jim, that would be like, wow, all that research, all that time. I guess what I really I'm curious about is how much did you have to do with regards to the compilation? Because you said you use a lot in the game show, in the trivia show. But did you search for anything new, anything unusual, or anything different, like going Far Eastern or Middle Eastern, as the case might be?
I did all of that and more.
Wow.
And I'll
Wow.
tell you right now
Uh
that
huh.
this book is the reason I retired from doing my game show.
Okay.
It also came from the game show. So
Right.
I'll explain. The game show was always my passion, doing entertaining audiences, spreading some knowledge and exciting people, having fun, bringing joy and entertainment and thought provoking things to audiences. But then once I decided to do this book became my passion. And I
Yeah.
no longer felt that passion for the game show as much. So I
Wow.
decided I have to focus just on this. And that was during the pandemic,
Hmm.
which was a perfect time to take a break from the game show. And I spent 3.5 years totally immersed in researching this book. Read over 100 books, scoured all media, even tea bags that I got. I read all the little quotes on every tea bag, found a couple of good ones. Most of them were not that good, but I was
Uh-huh.
very, very picky about what quotes I put in the book and tried to make sure that a lot of them are unique. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
In the book, there are some quotes about trees talking. Now,
Ah.
I never heard about trees talking, but I got interested in it. So I read a book on trees talking. And I got now a whole bunch of quotes in the book about trees talking. And for anyone who thinks that this is crazy or out there, this is about the intelligence of nature,
Mm-hmm.
the fascinating interconnections of different natural things.
Yeah.
And one of the experiments that was done to show how trees think and talk is that they had two trees, and one tree got to watch the other tree get murdered. So
Ooh.
by a person who came in and murdered it. And
Wow.
they hooked that tree up, the witness tree, to a galvanizing or galvanic response machine to measure its emotional responses. And they had different people come in the room. In the tree, nothing happened. Then the guy who killed the other tree came in the room, and the galvanic response went off the charts. So that showed that the tree had an emotional response to this
Mm-hmm.
person. So little things like that I went into and found really fascinating examples just to give people greater awareness of certain subjects. And that goes into even work, where I studied the art of shokunin, which is the Japanese way of taking pride in your work, and how
Mm.
far they go
Yeah.
to actually master their craft, and that it also entails giving back to the community and the people around them. So I've tried to actually enrich readers with new and interesting subjects, in addition to the regular things that we all deal with on a day to day basis. But for me, it was an unbelievably enriching experience. And one thing just kept leading to another, like a river. This book led to that book, and this man's history got me interested in that man who wrote a book that I read. And it just kept going like that, day after day, probably up to 16 hours a day. My wife had to rescue me, or I would have starved to death.
Gene, you are truly inspirational and thought provoking. And I love that piece that you just shared with us there. I want to show you something again. I love sharing pictures sometimes. And this one is even more fascinating. You're going to do some color commentary for us. Tell us about this. Are you seeing it, Gene?
No, I don't see anything because I'll comment as soon as I see something. All I see is
Oh,
my face, and I'm not going to comment on that.
ah, I'm not seeing that. It is not showing up. Hold a second. Okay, it's you with a picture here just now. Hold a second. Are you seeing it now?
Is it the scroll or
No, it's with bowls actually.
no? I don't see it. Is it a picture of me with Tibetan bowls?
Yeah, some big bowls like
Oh
brass
well,
bowls.
I can tell you about that without, even though I'm not able to see it. Um, That's a long story, actually, which started in 1995, which
Mm-hmm.
was the beginning of my spiritual journey in life, actually. And
Yeah.
it came because of a car accident. I was in a serious
Wow.
car accident, pretty badly injured, unable to work for a while, and was in pain for a long time. Could not get out of pain. Modern medicine couldn't help me. I didn't have broken bones. I had fascia,
Mm.
muscle connectors and things that were out of place.
Yeah.
So I went to Canyon Ranch in Tucson, Arizona, for some of their really avant-garde um, kind of different health protocols, and they fixed me. So when I came back, I all of a sudden got interested in all kinds of spiritual things. One of which was every time I was in New York City, when I would go downtown, I would see Tibetan stores, and I would go in, and I got very interested in the Tibetan bowls. I don't know why, but that was what I always ended up asking about. What do you do with that bowl? And they wouldn't tell me. They would say, "We eat rice," and because I think they didn't feel I was ready for the right answer.
Mm.
And then
Okay.
one day I went to a little Tibetan store in the basement on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, and this Tibetan lady started telling me about the bowls. She had hundreds of them in the back of the store. It was just packed in this little tiny room. And she took one out and she hit it. She said, "Here, listen." And I went, "Okay." And she took another, "Here, listen." And then she said, "Okay, hum to this bowl." I hummed. And then a whole wave of energy went through my body with one particular ball. She
Ah.
said, "That's your ball. You buy this one."
Aha.
Right. So I bought it.
Okay.
And then I started at home. I play it, hum with it, put it on the floor. One day I decided to put it on my body, put it on my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden the pain in my shoulder went away.
Okay.
Well, my eyes opened pretty wide, and I went back to the store and I told her the story. She said, "You need another bowl." She started the same process. Get two, put them on both sides of you, get in the middle, play them both, and hum. So I did. So then I came back and she started teaching me the art of Tibetan bowls. And then one day she said, "You've learned enough. Now you teach." I said, "How? Why would I teach?" She said, "Because you teach. My English is not good. You teach. You tell them what I tell you." So I said, "Okay." So she said, "I'll get." I said, "But I don't know anyone that wants to know." She said, "I'll get you people. So you come back
Wow.
next Tuesday, whatever." She gave me a date 3 weeks away. So I came back and I kind of had little cue notes, so I would remember all the things that I had learned and taught people how to tone. It's called toning when you hum with the
Yeah.
ball,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
got the group toning. We did Tibetan bowl baths, is what they call it, where you put the bowls on your body. And pretty soon I had such a following that we didn't fit into the Tibetan store in the little back. So I had to start renting studios. So I ended up
Wow.
renting the Alvin Ailey studio on their off hours. And all of a sudden I had following. And then I'm on the baby channel teaching pregnant women how to use Tibetan bowls for to help their pregnancies. And
Mm.
I'm doing a concert with crystal bowls at the United Nations. And it became a second career. So that's the story of the bowls.
Ah, wow. Gene, that's a really fascinating and amazing story. Thank you for sharing.
But
I want
all
to
those
shift.
things, let
Yeah,
me
go
just
ahead.
sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but all these things go into the book. Not to
Ah,
always come back to the book, but
yeah.
there's actually a section on health, healing, and vibration, which incorporates and has some of the wisdom quotes about vibrational healing in it,
Yeah.
which is just to introduce, because I have done a lot of study of Eastern philosophies, because my study of Tibetan bowls led me to Sanskrit mantras, which is an energy based language that also helps in healing. And
Yeah.
I ended up with a spiritual teacher in that who I actually dedicated the book to on the last
Wow.
page of the book with the
Okay.
Gayatri mantra, which is the mantra for enlightenment.
Yeah. Fascinating indeed. I really want to shift gears a little bit and I want to look at another publication, Younger and Wiser: Peaceful Words for a Troubled World. To me personally, Gene, that publication should be in any century, any time frame. Tell us about it.
Well, hopefully, both of these books are for any time. That's the
There you
whole
go.
idea.
There you
This
go. I
wisdom,
agree.
wisdom is timeless and it's
Yes.
always relevant.
Yes.
The interesting thing, I'll just do a sidetrack, come back to your question, but the interesting thing is the connection that I discovered researching the wisdom quote book is that when going all the way back in time to thousands of years ago, to Egypt, to the Roman dynasties, to Greek history, they were dealing with the same issues we deal with today.
Yeah.
Human nature
Yeah.
hasn't changed. Our situations, our technologies have changed greatly, but humans are still dealing with the same interrelationship issues, the same political power issues, the same issues of all kinds. And then if you look at Younger and Wiser, that also deals with that. And there's parts of my new book that deal with what I mean by Younger and Wiser, which is the energy of youth aligning itself with the wisdom of our elders, and how tribal societies forever have respected their elders and looked to them for wisdom and experience. whereas our Western societies often discard older people as no longer useful. But
Mm.
Younger and Wiser wants to bring that back, that respect for the elders, and the fact that youth can really gain a lot from the elders, and the elders can learn a lot from the youth. And for me, I was wiser than I thought when I was younger, hence the title Younger and Wiser, which
Mm.
is a whole book of backstory poetry. I wrote poetry all the years I was on tour and was an entertainer. But when I went to put this book together, it brought back memories of all the unusual places I was in the world when I wrote them. So on the back of each poem is the story of where I was. Could be in Europe, could be in the Caribbean. There were a couple from the Caribbean. It was in Hawaii, the West Coast, some obscure little town in the United States, wherever it was that I got inspired to write this poem and why, which kind of gives a whole narrative to my life at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I could sense that connection there, that resonance. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. What is your great message, Gene? I sense that you are deeply philosophical about life and the positive aspect of human nature and how we can overcome challenges and certainly synergize and even reach a better plane in terms of how we live and support and become as individuals. If you had the opportunity to speak to the entire universe, just about 8 billion people, what are some of the things that you would actually say to them based on what you know now, being the kind of individual that you have developed and grown into?
Well, first of all, my goal is to enrich anyone who comes across my path or reads one of my books.
Yeah.
That's my goal. But the idea is that if you have more wisdom, and this is true of individuals, corporations, societies, any entity that has more wisdom will make better decisions. And on an
Mm,
individual level, if people make better decisions,
yeah.
they will live happier and more fulfilling lives. And that's really the purpose and the reason for sharing what I've learned is to hopefully help people make better decisions and live happier, more fulfilling lives. So basically, these are quotes to form a life around. And one of the people, I didn't mention this before, who told me what they had done with my book is they've taken 20 quotes from the book that they just spoke to them, they resonated with, and they've put them in a file in their computer and printed it out. And that's kind of going to be their personal wisdom code. And that's what I encourage people to do is to go through the book and find things that speak to you. For instance, I Never Get Tired of Being Useful by Leonardo da Vinci is one of
Mm,
mine. I have
okay.
my personal wisdom code as well.
Yeah.
And then there's another one from Mother Teresa, let no one ever come to you without leaving happier. I
Mm,
love that. And
yeah.
then there's another one by Benjamin Disraeli about, and I'll just paraphrase because I don't remember the exact words, but rather than sharing your riches with someone else, teach them how to find their own.
That's right.
So
That's
to
right.
help people find their own inner greatness.
Mm.
What a great thing to be able to do. So if I can help people do that, my mission has been accomplished.
Wow, what a fascinating thing. Benjamin Disraeli, former Prime Minister of Great Britain. I was reading some stuff about him, and I'm fascinated by that quote because what he was saying is that every individual gene, no matter how we think about them or how we perceive or see them, there's some level of value that every individual brings to the world. And it reminds me of a quote by the late great Mahatma Gandhi where he says, the best way in which we can discover ourselves is being able to give service to others. And that is so profound. And I think, Gene, that you are giving tremendous service to people with regards to that positive philosophy of life and the quotes that you have chosen. So, in terms of the future, Gene, what does your vision see? What do you speculate on? What do you envisage for the future going ahead for Gene S. Jones?
Well, by the way, I have to mention that I love that you mentioned Gandhi because he's the most quoted person in my book.
Yeah.
I went
Yeah.
through the book just to see. I said, I wonder, because I have some people quoted more than once and other
Yeah.
people quoted once or twice. But then Mahatma Gandhi, when I went through the book, he was the most quoted person. A lot of
Wonderful.
wisdom in that man.
That's right.
And me personally, just to be able, there's a something that I read from Steve Jobs. And
Mm-hmm.
Steve Jobs always encouraged the people he worked with when they would have a meeting. He'd say, "Now go out and make a dent in the universe." So well, I'm trying to make my own little positive dent in the universe, and each little thing that I contribute, or every time I talk on the air with people like you, um, I hopefully am just putting my little dent in the universe. I almost picture myself with a little hammer and a chisel, and I'm just denting the universe with something positive that hopefully somebody out there is picking up on and can make useful. Because wisdom, it's great to possess wisdom, but the next step is to put it to good use. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I would love to encourage people to do, and that's what I'm kind of dedicated to now. And the next step for me, in answer to your question,
Yeah.
is I am working on a book of my own original wisdom quotes, of which I have about 200 pages now. And I already have a title for it. And that same artist has already done the cover. So it's starting to form, and it will be called Modern Wisdom. And it'll be thought
Wow.
provoking wisdom quotes for the 21st century.
Wow. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Gene. Really appreciate that. So we're coming to the end of this fascinating episode, and you have shared a whole lot of thought provoking information and value in terms of the content that you have shared. If you had a final thing to say, what would be a parting word for listeners, Gene? What would you want to say to them?
First of all, I'd like to say something to you. This is one of the
Sure.
most intelligent, heartfelt interviews I've done. So
Thank you.
kudos to you for
I
really
appreciate that.
you're really tuning into what I'm trying to do. It's appreciated. Um,
Appreciate that. Thank you. You inspired that though, Gene. Thank you. Thank
oh,
you very much.
well, then it's mutual.
All right.
As far as and now I forgot the question, so you'll have to repeat it.
If you had a parting word to say to people on this platform right now from your heart, what would you say to them, Gene?
Well, I would say that wisdom is everywhere. And one of the phrases I use is it's up to us to just pluck it from the universe, wherever we find it. I would love it if people find it in my book, but it's everywhere. And it's also inside of us if we just listen to ourselves. And listening to our inner selves is a very important thing as well. So I would just like to encourage people to do that on a more frequent basis, maybe get to a quiet place and really get in tune with themselves. And that will help us all understand ourselves better as well as each other. And if we understand each other better, we can be more tolerant of each other, and maybe there'll be more peace in the world. And I don't
Ah,
say that in some esoteric way. It just it pains me to see how so many people don't listen to or respect the other person's opinion. And I think that all opinions need to be given some heartfelt value, just so we can all kind of find a compromise and a way to get along.
yeah. Emphatic. I love it. Thank you for sharing, Gene. We just have about a minute to go, and I want to show up on the screen some information, but I also want you to tell the audience how they can get the book, Consolidated Wisdom, and if they need to make contact with you for any other thing with regards to your right variety of skills, how they can reach you.
Very nice. Well, it's easy to get the book on Amazon,
Yeah.
or they can go to my website, GeneJonesWisdom.com. I see it on the screen. When you
Hmm.
go there, there's the whole story of my career, which is fairly unusual. Maybe they'll find it entertaining and interesting. And also, if they want to get in touch with me, there is a way to email me, the info at ninepillarsofcreativity.com, which is my third book that I will be writing after Modern Wisdom, which will be the 9 character traits that will help people live a more creative life to be more productive in their lives.
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful. So there you go, folks. We have had the company of author Gene S. Jones, but he has been so much more and has done so much more in his life and his career. This episode was entitled Inspirational and Thought Provoking Author Gene S. Jones. Until next time, this is Andy of Andy's Personal Development live in the studios of Let's Just Read, saying so long, God bless, Godspeed, but remember, keep reading, keep looking for wisdom, keep looking for knowledge, keep looking for inspiration, looking for information, and most of all, be enlightened by what you read. Thank you so much for your continued commitment and your support. Godspeed, God bless. Bye for now. Shalom. Namaste.
Amen
Bye.
to that.
Bye for now, guys.